There are times when we need to process what has happened in our life or emotions that we might be feeling. Present moment living, mindfulness, helps us to recognize when those thoughts are helpful, when it is something that we're needing to process to move through emotions, or when we are simply getting stuck in a place where we are thinking and worrying and sad about the possibilities or the past, and allowing that to impact the way that we are feeling in the present moment.
There are healers on this planet with the power to soften the suffering of mankind, yet they have remained in the recesses of the world, abused, discarded, and labeled as trash. This is The Touch of a Mustang. I am your host, Shalise Clough, and I'm here to tell the story of wild horses, Mustangs, and the humans who are discovering and sharing their gifts while working to protect their well-being and preserve their spirit, so this divine power won't be lost. Join us on this quest with the wild Mustang.
Welcome back to The Touch of a Mustang. I'm super glad that you guys are here with me today. I want to delve in looking at again some of the significant ways that horses can help us to manage, improve, and really thrive within our mental world. And as I've talked with a lot of people who work with horses, and especially who work with them to help people in their daily lives, there have been a number of threads that have run through these conversations about what exactly it is that the horses do to help us, what exactly the interaction with horses result in, and how that can improve our mental state and our well-being. I know on a personal level, there's no doubt in my mind that my time spent with horses helps me to better interact with the world at large. And one challenge we face in the world today is that a lot of our first line of defense when it comes to mental health is very medically based, often pharmaceuticals, and then, of course, therapy, particularly things like talk therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy, which certainly have their place, but horses can do a lot of those things that are needed to improve our mental health. And I found that it occurs in a much more natural process, meaning we aren't even consciously thinking about the changes that are occurring, but they happen when we spend time with horses. So one of those things that has been shown to be very valuable in people spending time with horses is that they allow us to live more fully in the present moment. This is also known as mindfulness. To begin this discussion, I really want to talk about how mindfulness helps us improve our mental health and being, and why it's an important element of a healthy mental life. There are two quotes that are often in my mind when I think about mental health. They are concepts that have helped me, particularly when it was more difficult than normal to regulate and rebalance my mental and emotional state. The first one is by Lao Tzu. He said, "If you are depressed, you are living in the past. If you are anxious, you are living in the future. If you are at peace, you are living in the present." And this is incredibly profound ideas to consider how we approach life. So to break that down a little bit, I think one thing we all long for is to have peace in our life, to feel regulated and balanced and like we are in a good place. And he says depression is living in the past. A lot of times, depression is caused by ruminating, by repeatedly thinking about often things that happened or things that we can't change. And it's no wonder that it's so difficult, because we spend a lot of time and energy in places where we don't have control. We can't go back and change the past. But thinking constantly about it and how we wish we could can put us in a place where we feel incredibly poorly about our life. The other thing he points out is if you are anxious, you're living in the future. And I think this is incredibly profound, because a lot of our anxiety is found because we are anticipating outcomes in the future that may or may not occur. But we are living and reacting as if they are occurring. And again, like with depression, it's not the moment we're in. So we can't do a whole lot about it. We can't do much to change what might happen in the future. We can certainly control the present moment, but often in the present, we are not in our head. We are simply coping and dealing with the situations before us. Another quote that I really love is by Seneca, and he says, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." This is a quote I've talked about before. I think it's incredibly profound, because we do create a lot of our suffering not because of what is happening to us in the present moment. Again, in the present moment, we tend to react and cope and deal with what's in front of us. A lot of our suffering are the things that are going through our mind, the things that we are thinking and trying to understand. And so let's dig into that a little bit more. Why can living in the present moment versus the past or future or thoughts in our head help us to really improve our mental state and our mental well-being? And this present moment living is often referred to as mindfulness. It's a term that has become much more popular recently and that people are more aware of. And it's because it is really important to our mental state. When we can be mindful of where we are at, then we aren't also thinking about problems that have happened in the past or that might occur in the future. And one thing that's highly linked with depression is rumination. Rumination is when we just get so focused on a thought, thinking about something, again, that maybe has happened to us, or fearing what could happen to us in the future, and just being stuck in this pattern where we almost can't stop thinking about it. We repeat these scenarios or these regrets in our head over and over again. And a foundational principle of mental health is that the things that we think impact the way we feel about our world. So if we're constantly thinking about these things that have been difficult for us or that make us sad, then it changes our mental state. That in turn affects our behavior and, of course, how we feel about life. When we are able to be mindful, we are able to return that focus to what's right in front of us, the things that we can actually do and control. And when we do that, we're often have a greater capacity to find goodness in the world around us. It allows us to more easily find joy. An example of mindfulness and how it can help us find joy might be something simple, such as observing the sunrise on your way to work, instead of being in your head thinking about what needs done for the day or your plans. You can live in this moment that's right in front of you and see beautiful things that are happening in your life right now. I think joy is another emotion, another element of life that we would all like to have more of. So when we can appreciate the world around us, the good things in our life, especially noticing small things that can make life more beautiful, then it allows us to pull those thoughts out of our head and to be in this moment that we're in right now. Most often, the present moment is much more neutral than the thoughts in our head. The present moment is much more what we make of it at that time. We can see beautiful things like the sunrise, or we can find something to allow to irritate us, like someone cutting us off in traffic. We can also choose, when someone cuts us off in traffic, to simply change our thoughts about it, to consider whether it's something that we need to allow to impact our mental health. It's difficult for us to be present. It's really easy and natural to go into our mind and to get stuck on the future or the past. And one thing with horses is that they very naturally and easily pull us back into focus if they are a horse who is still engaging and reacting with the world around them. And what I mean by that is there's some horses who are shut down. They don't really react with the world anymore. They have learned what is acceptable and how to comply with that, and no longer question their environment. They simply go along with it because it has become the path of least resistance to them. If you work with a horse that has entered the human world in a way where their behavior and needs and responses are considered, then they have this incredible ability to keep us in the present moment, because there is a constant interaction between the individual who's working with the horse and the horse. One example that I've seen of that with my horses is that a lot of times if I'm riding, I'll try to get some video to put up for some posts or things like that. And every time I do it, almost immediately the horses recognize that I've disengaged with them, and that behavior is reciprocated. So like I will get my camera out and we're going along nicely, and then they'll decide, oh, this is a great moment to turn around and go back to the barn with their herd members, or this is a great moment to get the grass. And it's almost as if they're saying, you're not here with me, so I don't really need to be here with you. But that changes when we return and refocus to what's happening right in front of us. So that's just one example of the incredible way that horses help us to return to the present moment. And it's not something that always occurs riding. It can be something that happens by simply interacting with your horse on the ground. There have been times where I've gone out to the barn and the horses will interact with me. And then if I pull out my phone and disengage with them, that is again reciprocated. So horses are really good at helping us to identify, well, I left where I'm at and I'm living in a world in my mind or somewhere else than what's right in front of me, than in this present moment. And that's, I think, one of the biggest challenges to living a mindful life, to staying engaged in the present moment, is recognizing that you're no longer there, is catching yourself when you start to enter into your head and to begin living in the past or living in the future and creating the emotions related to those things that we're imagining or remembering. When we look at mindfulness and present moment living in terms of mental health, if you go into the research, there are a lot of ways that it affects our mental health. So boosting self-awareness is one way. And again, that comes in the form of recognizing I want to stay in the present and I can feel myself leaving it. And so I'm able to draw myself back out in the present. Maybe in a real life scenario, you're, again, driving to work and you start thinking about what needs done for the day or dilemmas with your children, and you can pull out of that, recognizing that there's not anything you can do about those things in this moment, and entering the present moment where you're able to observe that what is happening around you. And I will say, it's not that we can never be in the thoughts in our head. Obviously, there are times when we need to process what has happened in our life or emotions that we might be feeling. Present moment living, mindfulness, helps us to recognize when those thoughts are helpful, when it is something that we're needing to process to move through emotions, or when we are simply getting stuck in a place where we are thinking and worrying and sad about the possibilities or the past, and allowing that to impact the way that we are feeling in the present moment, which we know that emotions will then impact our behavior, and it's very cyclical in that way, that then our behavior creates situations that are difficult or uncomfortable, and then we think about it and ruminate on it and feel bad about it. So that boost in self-awareness can be really beneficial, to be mindful, to be intentional about where we let our thoughts go. There's value in the problem-solving process, and that's certainly something that needs to stay there. That shouldn't be eliminated. But when we're more mindful, we can recognize this is valuable, and I am solving problems, I'm looking for solutions, I'm moving through my emotions, versus these thoughts aren't anything I can do anything about, and they aren't helping me to feel good. I'm not finding peace. I'm not finding solutions. I'm just sitting in these places full of bad, negative emotions. And I think it's important to recognize there's a place for emotions that don't feel good. There's a place for anger in our life and sadness in our life. Those are guideposts for us to tell us how we need to change things in our life. So it's not that we don't ever want to feel those emotions, but again, it's when they become imbalanced to where they are taking over our life and our interactions with the world. Another way that mindfulness can really help is for us to decrease stress. Now, stress gets a bad rap, and stress is not always a bad thing. It can be a really good thing. It can push us to improve and to be better. And the problem in our world today is that often it becomes overwhelming, and it inhibits us rather than enhances us. When we can take away unnecessary stress, sometimes there is stress. For example, if a child gets hurt, you have this stress, this urgent action to make sure that they are cared for. And that's an important and relevant stress that we need to keep in our lives. But there's other stress where we, again, are thinking about everything we have to do. We are feeling overwhelmed. We are creating problems that aren't there. And that kind of stress can really wear on us and tear us down. And I'll just say this need to have balance is one of the most difficult things. For me, at least, it would be so much easier if it was just black or white. If I could just go one way or the other. Stress about everything, don't stress. But the reality is there is good stress that elevates our performance, allows us to do things better. And then there is bad stress that really diminishes our abilities and draws on resources without any payoff. And mindfulness in that way can really help us to stabilize our mood. Because when we get too deep into our thoughts, too deep into things that we can't change, our mood can really plummet, because it's really difficult to look at things that we don't want to be there and to recognize that there's nothing we can do about it. And we've talked already about how it can reduce anxiety and depression because of the way we think of the world around us, and if we are engaging in the present world or if we are living in a different place. And that ability to alter our thoughts, to be aware of our thoughts so that we may alter our thoughts, which in turn changes our emotional life, which in turn influences our behavior, is a really powerful tool. And one of the things that's so impactful about it is that we really start at the root of the problem. And one of the challenges about it, and one of the ways that horses can really help us, is because our thought process is so often unconscious. We can be going on a walk or driving in a car and begin thinking about something that's on our mind that we didn't actively seek out. It just happened. It just unconsciously entered our mind. And by becoming aware of that, by moving into the present moment, which is something horses are so good at helping us to do, then it allows us to be more conscious in our thoughts and what we choose to think. This idea that we don't have choice in our thoughts comes from that element of it, that they are sometimes unconscious. And if we aren't aware of the thoughts that are entering our head, then we really don't have much we can do about them. Developing that self-awareness is a really important strategy. There's a few other ways that I think horses help us to move into mindfulness and present moment living. And as I have gotten horses in my life and worked on training my Mustangs, it has been a really big process for me to overcome anxiety. Horses do hold with them an inherent danger because they are this big animal that is reacting from their own world and from their view. And so when I first got my Mustang especially, I really noticed how much anxiety I had in my life. And it's something that had developed over time because for me, I had gotten married pretty young and we started having kids. And as a mother, there's this innate instinct to just want what is best for your kids. And there is so much that we worry about, and especially in our world today where we're inundated with news and we can see every bad thing that has ever happened to someone else's child through news or now social media. And so my anxiety had increased exponentially, and I hadn't really even known it because I was living in this world of just raising my children and taking care of babies and doing everything I could in my power to protect them and to nurture them and to create a good life with them. And when I got Sylvanie, my first Mustang, and it began this process of interacting with her in a very cyclical way where she was responding to me and I was responding to her, and we would get in this cycle. It really brought to my awareness the level of anxiety I had. I was just holding it in the back of my mind and not even really aware of it. Between that and things happening in my life that were just beyond my control, it allowed me to really delve into understanding what I could and couldn't control, and allowed me to really recognize, which again, that awareness is the first step, to recognize that I have these intense levels of anxiety. And when I say intense levels of anxiety, like physical reactions. And so with Sylvanie, my first Mustang, I expected to go into my life with her much like I had with the domestic horses I'd had in my life, where I could really control her and use tools and different strategies to make her do what I wanted. And I think there were two elements that changed that for me. One was that's not really how I wanted our relationship to be. And maybe some of this is based on movies or these ideas that we have in our head that there's going to be this magical connection between you and these horses. I think anyone who loves horses grew up with movies like The Black Stallion, where this young boy takes this pretty wild and uncontrollable stallion and they have this beautiful bond and friendship that's unlike any other. And I think every horse person has that in the back of their mind. That's what they want with their horse. But I recognized I didn't really want to just control her. I didn't consciously recognize this, but looking back, this is what it was. I wanted to build a relationship of trust with her, is really what it comes down to. And so that didn't happen naturally at all. I think now we have a really good relationship that's really valuable, but initially that was not the case. We could not trust each other. We had not taken the time to build that relationship. And she had been halter trained at the prisons, and I thought, I'll just start from there. It's going to be great. I'll take her out and walk around the neighborhood. And that was not something she was comfortable with. She had moved from this wild world without people into the BLM holding pens where she was surrounded by other horses. And there was some interaction with people and vehicles and the domestic world. And then she had come into my world where there were children moving around and vehicles going by. And I think a lot of that drastic change impacted the way she reacted. And for her, she is a much more reactive horse, which we use negatively, but I actually love. It allows me to really see very clearly how she's feeling and what she needs or is concerned about in the moment. I actually love it because I'm very aware of whether she is doing well and comfortable and in a space that's safe for both of us, or if something occurs that throws us out of that space. But when I first would start to even try to walk her around, I remember one time in particular, I was just going to take her around the house. So our horse corral at the time was in the back of the house, and I was just going to take her up on the road in front of the house. And I walked her around, and it was fairly uneventful. I wasn't really at a point in my interaction with horses where I could look at them and see if they were escalating or if they were feeling comfortable or not. I really didn't think about it. It was just based upon how she was reacting. And I missed a lot of signals, but as we were walking back around to the house, she had some grass touch her stomach, and she just lost it. She just started throwing herself all over the place, and I remember thinking, she's a wild horse. Grass touching her stomach should not affect her. She shouldn't be scared of grass. And she wasn't. It was that she was getting all this stimulation, all these elements that she was unfamiliar with, and that one threw her over the threshold. And so after that happened, I was so anxious even taking her out of the corral, like probably shaking. I don't remember specifically. I do remember the first time I rode her out of the corral. We had worked a lot inside the corral. I didn't have a round pen at the time, so we just worked in the corral, and the first ride out, she did so good. She was so amazing. But I was just terrified on her back. Like, I remember shaking, and even my kids were out there watching, and my oldest daughter was just like, Mom, you are acting crazy, because I was just so nervous and anxious. And so those experiences really pointed me to not just anxiety that I was having with horses, but anxiety that was throughout my life. This constant stress and worry of something bad happening to someone I loved or happening to myself, and then how would my children be taken care of? And so one thing that I did use, and I still do use, is embracing the power of breathing. It sounds so weird and so simple, but when you're in a really anxious state, it's affecting your physical state of being. It's affecting your physiology. And again, it's something that happens unconsciously because our thoughts put us in this fight, flight, or freeze mode. And that in turn alters the way our heart's beating and the way we're breathing. We'll have these shallow breaths. And a strategy that can be used anytime in life and with our horses is really just stopping and recognizing, like, I am anxious and my bodily reactions are changing to where my heart's beating faster. These are things that even go into long-term health issues, like that high anxiety can in turn cause high blood pressure from the stress, and in turn affect our heart because it's functioning at this much higher capacity. But if we can recognize that, then we're able to calm down. We can realize, like, I'm barely breathing right now. And we all know that we obviously need breath, but a lot of times it's happening without us even knowing. So if we can step back into the present moment, and if we can just take those deep breaths and regulate our physiology to slow all of that down within us, then it will change the way we are physically feeling. And that breath work, as we just take that deep breath, we have to really start consciously and returning to our present moment and thinking about what we are doing instead of living in this fear and anxiety or worry, and return to the present moment. Take those deep breaths, which actually slows down the processes that are occurring in our body. And the really cool thing about that is we step back in situations that are maybe a concern for us, then we can also change the way the horses are feeling. And it's really interesting. And if you have horses, something I would definitely challenge you to try, that a lot of times if you stop and take deep breaths, you will be able to see your horse reflect that. Like they will also be letting out anxiety that they're feeling, and often anxiety that they get from us. I realize with my Mustang mare, like I would take her out of the corral and my anxiety would shoot up. And of course, if she's feeling that, because we know there is this coherence with horses where they are able to sense that change in physiology. This is how herds communicate in a lot of ways, where they see one horse reacting and respond to that. And so when they're with us, they do the same thing. They see how we're reacting. And so I'm having these high levels of anxiety, having my anxiety just shoot through the roof. And then, of course, that's reflecting on her, and she is probably wondering, where is the danger? I can feel your body telling you there's danger, and now I need to find out where the danger is to me. So there was no danger. There were no mountain lions or coyotes in our presence, but she would be able to feel that anxiety and tension from me, and then that certainly built it up within her. And so we were just in this process where it was like I was scared of her and she was scared of whatever I was scared of. And so being able to breathe, to take a step back, to calm yourself, is something that can really lower those strong emotions and pull you back again into the present moment, so that you guys can build that relationship of trust, and you can realize you're looking out for your horse and your horse is looking out for you, because you have built a relationship of trust where they can trust what you're feeling and the emotions that they are pulling from you, that physiological response that they're able to pick up on. And as you do this, as you have these interactions with horses, it also reconnects you to your body. Working with horses is a lot of physical movement. You want to walk forward, you take that step forward. You, if needed, might put some pressure on the lead rope, and it's all related to our body. A lot of our language with horses is not verbal. It's very much physiological. It is, my body does this, and then we hope the horse's body responds in a particular way. And re-entering our body in that way, because of our time that we spend in horses, brings us back into the present moment, especially, I would say, when it is something new and unfamiliar, whether we are with a new horse where we are learning those interactions. That's incredibly powerful. Or if it's someone who hasn't been with horses, and so they are very aware of what they're doing, and maybe because of some anxiety or concern about their interactions with horses. And so this is another way that horses have this incredible capacity to really draw us back into our bodies and return us to the present moment. Mustangs in particular are so good at this because they haven't been in our shut down domestic world, and I think we have to admit that a lot of us who are living in the domestic world have really turned our emotions and our thoughts on autopilot. We've allowed our unconscious to take over our life and to tell us what we should experience. And in that same way, a lot of horses have been told what to do, how to feel or not feel, so that they react or don't react in a certain way. And when you take in these Mustangs, especially those who had minimal interaction with the human world, they're still very much attuned to those emotions. It's an element that they use to make sure that they're safe and to interact with the world. And so they are really able to draw us into attunement with our emotions, because they are seeing our emotions sometimes even before we are. I think that's really what happened when I first got my Mustang mare, is she could sense my anxiety more than I probably could. And it really took me stepping back and being like, oh my gosh, I just have this incredible anxiety. And the really cool thing about that was, as I was able to work on these anxious feelings and emotions with my horse, to practice that change in thought and behavior, that practice I was able to pull over into my personal life, into my daily life with my family and with my relationships, and was able to use that information, not just in my time with my horses, not just in training my horses, but to use it and to use that awareness as I would go back into the domestic world, where a lot of things are, if we don't consciously control them, are happening to us. The world will tell us where to spend our time, what to worry about. The news will tell us all the things we should be fearful of, unless we can take a step back and say, is this logical? Is this a threat to me right now? Is this something that I should be allowing to create anxiety within me, or that I should continue to be sad and depressed about? Or is this something that I can look at? I can recognize what it is. I understand why I'm sad. And then I can move through that emotion and move into a better place after I have processed those feelings, after I've looked at them and sought to understand them. At that point, similar to what I talked about in one of my more recent podcasts, after we've gone through that process where we recognize our emotions, we recognize the things that are causing them, we see why they are causing them, we process these emotions. After that point, we can release them. We can let go of them and see that, yeah, there is a legitimate reason we felt this way, but we can now choose to move past that and to release them and to feel better. And as we're able to do that, when we're able to move into the present moment, it enhances our ability to make good choices. So talking about it from a perspective with horsemanship, when we can be in the present moment and when we can be attuned with our emotions, which then allow us to be attuned to our horse's emotions, then we can respond in better ways. So there's this video I saw that I was actually wanting to do a little bit of commentary on, but it was something on Facebook, and it was basically saying people should never let their dogs loose. And we have a tendency to really do this a lot, to put the responsibility for our emotions and our responses into someone else's hands. And I think this is actually very dangerous, and maybe I'll go back and find that video and give my perspective on it. But it's very dangerous because speaking in terms of the horse world, we can't control if everybody puts their dog on the leash. And I think there's even a valid argument for should they have to. If you're hiking in the mountains, should you have to be responsible for the possibility that you might see a horse? So I think it's something to talk about. But in this video, this dog was off the leash and it looked like a mountain trail, and it ran up to this horse and it was barking at this horse. And the girl that was on the horse was just absolutely freaking out. She was cussing. She was yelling at the person the dog belonged to. And the poor dog owner, I just had so much sympathy for him. He is trying to grab as it's at the horse's heels, and the horse is kicking at the dog. And really in this whole situation, the leader in this situation was the horse that was trying to hold it all in. And the rider on top of this horse was absolutely just frantic. Now, if that had been me, I simply would have got off my horse and taken control of the situation. Let my horse know it was okay. Help the owner get their dog. It's not someone else's responsibility to make sure that I'm safe in the environment that I choose to put myself in. And it really goes back to this idea that if we are aware of our emotions, if we are aware of our environment and what is causing those emotions, we can take control of it. This rider, I imagine, had probably been taught something that we're often taught, which is don't get off your horse. And so she reacted with these tremendous levels of fear. When had she been better in control of her emotions and recognized, okay, this dog is coming up. I see this dog coming up. What can I do about it? I realize maybe my horse is or isn't familiar with dogs. Some of my horses might not do anything if a dog came up and did that, and other ones might react very strongly. So being aware of the reaction that your horse might take, taking all this information into consideration, being aware of what I'm experiencing and why I feel this shoot of anxiety when I see this dog coming to my horse. And why is that? It's because I know that my horse might be scared of this dog, might not want a dog biting its heels, understandably. And I can take that information and then I can make better choices instead of staying on my horse and like putting all that responsibility into someone else's hands for what happens in this situation, putting that responsibility in this dog owner's hands that had no idea their horse was going to be on the trail and might not even know how their dog reacts to horses because it may never be around horses. You can take all that information, those emotions, those feelings, and you can use them to then make better choices. A better choice in this situation, in my opinion, would have been for this owner to get off their horse and to be the leader that they needed to be. You could even make an argument she could stay on her horse, but she needed to be a leader. And in that moment, she wasn't. She was reacting and she was blaming and she was giving her control to everything around her. And this isn't unusual. She's not alone in this. This is something that we all do, both with our horses and in our personal life, where we take these frantic emotions that we're feeling and we place all this responsibility on someone else to fix our situation for us. So if we can be aware of our emotions, if we can live in the present moment, then we are able to make better choices. And those better choices in turn make our life better. And through that, a way that it really impacts us is our relationships. That's our relationships with our family and loved ones, and it's also our relationships with our horse. When we can not remove, but be aware of emotions, aware of the thoughts that are creating emotions, and be clear on what is happening right now and what can I do about what is happening right now in this moment that I am in. And when we're able to do that, it will help our relationships, whether that's with our animals and our horses, where we can take a step back and analyze the situation in a more realistic way so that we can react out of leadership and confidence rather than fear and uncertainty. Then it changes the way that we interact with those around us. And as we do all those things, a lot of those really negative emotions that we experience can dissipate. And so these are a lot of the reasons that using in mental health therapy is so powerful, because there's this natural process that occurs where if we are sitting in talk therapy or even cognitive behavioral therapy, which is the exact same idea and is a valuable tool for sure, but it is something that we have to really pull that awareness out. It's a more difficult process because we don't have that instant feedback from the horse. And yes, we can think about our thinking and how's what you're thinking about creating these events in your life. And we can go through that and process that. But with horses, we can see immediately, I'm leaving this world that I'm in and entering my thoughts. So they can be this incredible tool that will instantly pull us back if they've been allowed to maintain that aspect of themselves in the domestic world. Now, I think if you're hopping on a horse at a trail ride, a lot of times those horses have learned to not react to their situation, which makes sense and is a protective factor for them because they have this wide variety of people with different skills and abilities and attitudes and emotions that they're having to constantly cope with. And so it's understandable that they would shut down. That would be a protective mechanism for them. So it's not always a negative thing. It's often something that they need and often something that we need. But as we move out of those states where our emotions are either being repressed or allowed to run rampant, that we can move more into the present moment and we can have this incredible ability to better manage our emotions, to better regulate our emotions. If any of you follow Lewis Howes, there's this episode I really love of his. It's not really an episode I've probably seen. It's probably just a clip. But he had talked to someone who studied the brain. He was a neuroscience scientist, and I believe he was a physician. So he was a neurosurgeon, and then he also studied the brain on a more theoretical level. And Lewis Howes had asked him, what is the most important thing that people can do to support their brain, to improve their brain. And his response was, learn to regulate your emotions, learn to identify your emotions, and then to use your thoughts to regulate them, to change them, to alter them. We like to go with the dialogue a lot of times that we don't have control over our thoughts. And again, just like that girl with the horse, when we do that, we give away all our power. If we tell ourselves we don't have control over something, we have two choices. We can let it go, and those are real legitimate things in our life that we don't have control over. But when it's our personal inner life and we say we don't have control over it, then we give away all our power. And we really are just going to be thrown about in life by whatever happens to us. When the reality is, if we can live in the present moment, if we can recognize those emotions, then we are able to live a better life. And I know this is just one of the incredible ways that horses can help individuals as we navigate this life, to help teach them these skills that they can learn in their time with horses, in the paddock, on the trail, in the round pen, and they can then take those skills that they learn with horses and they can use them in their lives and use it to make their lives better. It's one of the most incredible things that horses do for us, is to help teach us how we can better live in the world. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe. If you think that this is information that might help someone else or that might help a program that works with people and horses, then please share this. Forget how much power you have over your emotions and over your state of mind.
Thank you for joining us in learning about horses that heal and the humans who help them. We hope you'll continue with us on this journey. We'd love for you to subscribe on your favorite platform and follow The Touch of a Mustang on any of the major social media outlets. Please share with your friends, anyone who loves horses, or anyone who might be struggling and could benefit from this message. If you have felt the healing power of horses or help them in their divinely appointed mission, please reach out. We want to hear your story. As we say goodbye, always remember that the horse is always there to help you.